Before we start, there is a new video on Moistky Live concerning haters, MPs, and Caroline Lucas. Yes. And I'm streaming tonight over on Twitch as there's no PMQs, both linked down below. Today I want to talk about an epidemic, a crisis, one that has gripped the nation, one that must be addressed with swift action. This should be a Judge Moist video, I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised I couldn't be bothered to go and use one still instead of several. For this though, I want to go back in time. I want to go back to a Somerset village. For this, we are going back to July 2019 to Claverham, where a man was doing some rather diabolical things. Things that must be taken 100% seriously, because this, to me, tells me we as a society have a problem. At 11:30 PM GMT, the police were called, and along with the assistance of a helicopter and a sniffer dog, they were unsuccessful in finding this man. Who is this man, you ask? No one knows. He could be Tarquin the Running Man for all we know. Now, what had happened was, an anonymous victim, while telling the BBC that a man charged at her, which is quite intimidating, grunting, breathing heavily, and touching his groin. Now, he was dressed in warrior's attire, the kind of attire one must, when they see it, run to the mountains. Never meet this kind of attire head on, because if you do, you're fucked. Unless you know the safety word. The man was dressed as a gimp, although I would say the mask looks more like something from The Purge. It's quite fetching, I have to say. I mention this because this article leads handily to something else. This woman in question was terrified of what had happened, and now she is, or was then, panicked, because she's worried the man might jump out and go boo. Yeah. Yatton, of course, is renowned in the United Kingdom for its deep-rooted history, going back to medieval times, with the cult of the Gimp. Next, we're going to go to the more recent article. Courtesy of the Glasgow Times, a man was stopped by the police. Why was he stopped by the police, though? I mean, besides for being male, human, breathing, not walking around with a battered Mars bar in his mouth, you know, the usual. Maybe for having all his teeth. It was because he was walking his dog. Which is really strange, isn't it? Yes, very strange. You're all absolutely right. There are some photos of this, and we'll get to those in a moment. This dog, by the way, is so talented that this dog can walk 24/7 on her back legs. Which is just, that is some top-tier evolution. It's the kind of evolution that really throws shade to Darwinism and natural selection. So what, might you all be asking, is so special about the dog or the man that the police felt the need, in the middle of the day, during this rather heavy rainstorm that they had up in Glasgow because it always rains, to stop this man from walking his dog? I mean, it wasn't like the dog dropped trowel and the man did not pick it up, because that would be poor taste. One must always bring a bag with them, possibly a bottle of water depending on what the dog's eaten. Well, the reason why they stopped this man was primarily because of the dog. Because it's his wife in a gimp costume. Here's a photo of it. Glorious. Absolutely 100% top tier glorious. There's nothing people like to see more than the police just politely asking a few questions, because maybe they needed some tips about, I don't know, updating their canine unit. Can this one detect marijuana? Is it high maintenance? Does this dog work well with others? And how good is this dog's bite? Are just a few of some of the questions I'm sure these police officers were desperate to know. Of course, you wouldn't actually be able to tell if they asked the questions if their accents were Glaswegian or not. No offence to anyone that is. But seriously, I've been on hold with a few people working for Halifax, and honestly, I had no idea what they were saying. I would have been happier if they just put white noise on. The conversation would have been more riveting. Now, this moment was captured by a roofer who decided to, because honestly, why wouldn't you, to share this on Facebook. I think Twitter would have been a better option. In the post in question, he posted some comments, none of which I understand at all. So I'll put it on the screen and see if any of you can translate this at all. I mean, some of the words make sense, but no, it is utterly unintelligible. Right. This has led to thousands of people liking the post, thousands of people commenting on the post, with thousands more sharing the post. Great. We must raise more awareness for the plight of the GIMP. This was clearly an act of GIMP profiling by the police, and I consider that the highest form of discrimination. Oh, I've got a better one. Can we use GIMPs dressed up as dogs to do some furry hunting? The great GIMP v furry war can begin now. Say no to yiffing. Say yes to furry fox hunting with GIMPs.
Yes.
Let's make this happen. The police have since confirmed that they merely wanted to speak to them and ask about this rather interesting public display, and not to inquire about what I believe to be the most pertinent of issues. I sorely hope the Mayor of Glasgow, if they have a Mayor of Glasgow, quickly works to shut this down, to get the GIMPs off the streets. Put them back where they belong in their cages in respective dungeons. Just change the safety word to an English word. They'll never get out. Now, I know this is a lot more light-hearted than usual, and certainly a shorter video, but that's entirely because I just wanted to have a little fun today. Tomorrow I shall be releasing the exhibition of Stupid People number 22, I believe, so do keep your ears out for that. I have some rather tasty subjects for it. I am streaming tonight over on Twitch. I hope to see you all there, or some of you. I'm just grateful anyone turns up, to be honest. It's a fishing game. To finish this video, I'm going to play the outro, but then use a clip from the most recent story on my reading channel, which is linked below along with the full video. If you're at all interested, please do consider going over there and subscribing. So I hope you'll have a fantastic Wednesday, and thank you all for listening. The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. For the most wild yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad I am not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them. To me, they have presented little but horror. To many they will seem less terrible than barocks. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace, some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive, in the circumstances I detail with awe, nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for the faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early, and was happy to find my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favourite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend interperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew, day by day, more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. But my disease grew upon me, for that disease is like alcohol, and at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old, and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when in his fright at my violence he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fibre in my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut out one of its eyes from the socket.